When you're training that kid, you're not worried about the kid taking your job in a few weeks.
We always look for that. And in any role, it doesn't need to be engineering. Can someone think out of the box?
What is it about their architecture?
I think the technology is there today.
What has really changed?
Cloud has made it very easy to deploy new applications, so people will go and buy.
I was waiting for you to drop Fusion. Yes.
Think of Copilot as similar to, when mobile came in, everybody needed a mobile website.
Okay, so we are starting the very first episode of Decoding AI with Accel. And we have a very special founder to start the series, which is Surojit from Ema. Welcome, Surojit.
Thank you, Anagh. Very excited to be here.
Surojit is a very special founder for Accel. We have known him for a long time. You headed product at Flipkart during a critical time for the company, 2015 to 17. That was one of the first professional engagements for the partners at Accel with you. Before that, you founded and were the head of product at mobile ads globally in Google. More recently, you were the CPO at Coinbase. Now, if someone had to look at your recent resume, they would say, okay, this guy is really good at building consumer products, probably one of the very few who has done so many back-to-back successfully. Why enterprise?
Cool. Great question. Two things. First, actually, I started my journey with the enterprise. My first job was at Oracle in the US, and I wrote a lot of software. I really enjoyed writing enterprise software. I wrote a lot of the core distributed log management layer for Oracle RAC, Oracle's flagship product. It's actually that code, it still exists and still in production. It's almost more than 20 years back.
Wow.
And then, yes, my journey has taken me to consumer software. I built and led many successful teams. And one thing that stood out in every company was we had this very talented people. And then a large part of their time was spent in repetitive tasks, things that they ideally would not like to do, but they have to do to keep the product running. So my engineering leads and myself often spent a lot of time thinking about how do we make the teams productive. And in some cases, as you know, in Flipkart, as well as at Coinbase, like it's natural for any startup, we went through hard times. So we had to reduce our workforce. But when that happens, it's not necessarily your work does not get reduced proportionately. So at that time, you are in a crunch situation. Or how do we get more out of a smaller team? And you are actually fighting a battle right in the workplace.
Just to get a sense, Surojit, that let's say Google, Flipkart, and Coinbase, like how big were the teams you were leading?
Google teams were very large. Thousands of people in Google mobile ads and Google shopping. Coinbase, hundreds of people. Flipkart, similarly, hundreds of people, 500-600 people. Coming back to your question, that really bothered me. How do we kind of get more productivity? And I think the technology is there today that we can leverage or at the cusp to create a level of automation that was never created before. And that's what triggered me to think about, okay, can we actually solve this problem and go back to my original roots in enterprise software, build new kind of enterprise software that actually tackles the enterprise productivity issues head on. And I think if we can solve this problem, not just us as a company, but collectively in the industry, we will truly usher in the next industrial revolution, right? I think every enterprise can be more efficient.
Let's double down on the new part. Cloud has been underway for well over 20 years almost now. The average enterprise, they use more than 200 SaaS tools as of today. Why do we even need another enterprise software company? What has really changed? We understand LLMs are in, but what does that mean for the enterprise stack?
Look, I think enterprise software is kind of broken today, right? As you said, there are hundreds of applications. Average enterprise has more than 200 applications deployed. Most of it is self-aware. So, in fact, cloud has made it very easy to deploy new applications, so people will go and buy. And then you end up paying for seats that nobody is maybe using. So there is a lot of wastage and very poor ROI. That's the first challenge. Second is because you have so many such software sprawl, actually the complexity is very heavy. and you need hundreds of people to manage your software. You don't know what is where. Average, only 1/3 of enterprises have deployed any type of automation technology. And I think the reason for that is, automation is very difficult to deploy. The automation as it exists today is very brittle, very hard to set up. And it's not the fault of the automation companies, it's just a hard problem to solve. So most companies who have deployed automation also have not fully deployed it, maybe deployed it in parts in some of the most critical places. So there is complexity that makes it very difficult, and you need to hire more people to manage that complexity. Third challenge is because you have such software sprawl, you have data silos. Your data is broken now into different applications. So if you want to build something useful and effective, you need another layer of software to bring all that data together. That's what some of the data warehousing software was meant for. But those software gives you visibility, right? They don't necessarily enable you to act on that data or make decisions kind of comprehensively across the organization. So I think there are a lot to be figured out and fixed in the enterprise. And that's kind of the reason we started this company in the first place.
I remember having a long debate with you on this at your basement in Los Altos. We went way beyond the midnight. What was not intuitive back then? You always had this vision clear to you. At least it was not very intuitive to me. What do you mean by the horizontal operating system being AI? SaaS applications, generally you think of them as some database doing some CRUD applications with an interface. And the way the industry has evolved is having a bunch of these for different functions, for different personas. Now you are thinking of something radical. You're saying maybe all of this will not exist in a few years. We'll have a horizontal conversational OS layer. That's what Emma calls it. That is the vision you had last year. You've been building towards it till now. Why do you think this is the right approach? Would love for our listeners to understand as well.
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
You're like, when will this guy get out of my home?
That's not a problem. We were set up in our basement, and often people will work there till midnight or later.
Interesting.
Yeah, so look, when I started this company, the vision for us was that we'll build an operating system, a conversational operating system that works across the enterprise. It's a very bold vision, very ambitious vision. Let me explain a little bit. First, I think because of the challenges in the enterprise software today, right, the next generation of software, enterprise software, will be radically different. And a lot of current software stack may not exist. First, I talked about the data silos. I think the next generation of enterprise apps, which are generative AI-enabled enterprise applications, will actually need to access data across the enterprise to be effective. So when you do that, you need to actually get over the data silos, need to bring the data together. And then if you think about enterprise applications today, they're very fixed UI, does a fixed set of workflows, right? And they have a fixed schema of data underneath them, right? Now, if you reimagine that stack, where all your data is together, you have a generative AI layer on top, which can, in real time, render the pixels needed to create the functionality for the user, right? So user can just ask any question, right? It could be over voice, over language, over any other medium. But the actual UI is rendered in real time, right? So the application is no longer fixed, it's adaptive. It actually, based on the user, based on the functionality the user is looking for, based on their access and their role in the organization, it morphs into the right application in front of the user. I think that's the vision towards which we are building, and it will be radically different vision. A few other things that will happen along with that, which is one, a lot of this shelfware will go away because people will no longer pay per seat. So there'll be disruption in the fundamental usage model or pricing model, because now you can actually price per outcome, price per use. So that will be a radical kind of transformation in the ROI you get from enterprise software and also accountability of the software. And the second big thing that will happen is, I think today, as I said, there's a lot of people needed to manage your software. And in fact, sometimes large enterprises will outsource to services companies, BPOs, other companies to manage their software. I think you are going to see, and I think there's a lot of talk about that. Instead of software as service, service as software. So that change is also coming, along with this change in the re-architecture of the enterprise stack.
What is it about the current architecture of existing incumbents? And most of the incumbents, by the way, are not positioned this way horizontally. They are mostly, you have leaders in sales software, in HR software, in different personas, verticals, and so on. But still, for their particular functions, what is it about their architecture that makes it very difficult for them to pivot to the new world that you are talking about?
It's the fundamental kind of nature of their products. So if you roll it back maybe 20, maybe 30 years, there was operating system and databases, and all your data were in databases, and applications were very hard to write. So you would write SQL to operate on the database, and that's your application. Yeah. And then Salesforce and others came in, and in fact, Larry Ellison had joked that Salesforce is just a database, right, with some UI, which is true, but also not true because it's radically simplified. How to operate on the database, right? So that's why these applications grew, because business users could now use them. Nobody needed to learn SQL and so on. Your sales team could use Salesforce, right? They don't need to learn SQL. So they actually solved a problem and served a purpose. That's why they exist, and they became very, very big. But then the challenge was, as I explained, it created data silos. So from originally, all your data was together, then it got fragmented into these applications because usability trumped the need for keeping the data together, trumped the need over keeping the data together. But now, the new world, the advantage they had is kind of a disadvantage, because to be effective, they need to operate across multiple data sets. So for example, can Salesforce access your HR data? Yeah. Can it access your accounting data? Can it access your procurement data? It cannot, because by nature, the way it is, it can only access Salesforce data, sales data, and it's very effective in doing that. So that's the key challenge. So it's like, an advantage that they had is kind of a disadvantage in the new world, right? And some of them will transform themselves or adapt themselves, and others probably would not. And you can see the struggle a little bit, right? Which is, let's build a co-pilot. Yeah. So everyone is building a co-pilot. Now, I think of co-pilots, I have gone through multiple technological revolution from internet to mobile. Think of co-pilot as similar to, when mobile came in, everybody needed a mobile website, which is another way or a mobile app, another way to access your same application through a different medium. I think of Copilot being very similar. You're accessing the same functionality with a different modality, not through clicking through UI, but through conversation, through voice or a natural language. And it's easier and simpler. So everybody will have Copilots. That's kind of given, and you will need to build Copilots to your application. But that doesn't solve the fundamental problem of how do we orchestrate across applications? How do we actually get complex workflows automated across different silos in the organization?
The other interesting thing about Ema, if I go to your website, there's no book demo or buy Ema kind of a button. There's hire Ema. What does that mean? How do we hire Ema, and why is it not buy but hire?
Yeah, I have a little story. Okay. Because first, when we launched Ema, we had no marketing at all. And we spent less than $1,000 for our marketing. And a lot of people actually advised me, do not do this. Do not put hire Ema. It's confusing. And what does it even mean? Just copy paste other websites and so on. But we were very insistent that we are building something different. We are not building another software. We are really building synthetic intelligence for the enterprise. What does that mean? Ema is not another piece of software. Ema is an employee, universal AI employee you can hire Emma and teach her kind of the enterprise context very quickly, onboard her, give her some feedback, and very quickly, within a few weeks, Emma can become more proficient than sometimes your best employees in a certain role, right? When we think about that, I really think the hiring is more appropriate, actually, word than buying or trying a software or licensing software, because you really need to think of Emma and this type of agentic software in the future as almost a human mimic, that you are hiring a person. What does that person need to understand? Because on day one, that person knows nothing about your enterprise, but may be very smart and may have understanding of that role from outside. So you'll have to spend a little bit of time with that person to quickly ramp them up. And that's important aspect of deploying this new type of software or working with this new type of software. So yeah, we really think of Emma as another employee who can work hand in hand with humans.
I guess then hiring Emma also ties a little bit better with the outcome-based pricing model that you're talking about, because you don't hire humans for like just productivity enhancement or just as a workflow, right? You hire humans to get the job done. And that is what Emma also does for you. What does the first few days of hiring Emma look like in my organization? What does Emma do once she comes in? And what does she do a few months down the line?
Yeah, great question. Very similar to how you will onboard a human. So even in our company, good companies do this. When you hire someone, you have an onboarding document, getting started document.
Yeah.
So you give pointers to other kind of knowledge bases, documents, past maybe design docs, PRDs, or whatever, SOPs. So this person can quickly understand how things are done in your organization. So first step in hiring Emma will be that, which is connect Emma to the relevant sets of documentation, policies, SOPs, and also Emma knows how to use tools, which is a big part of building Emma, teaching her how to use tools in the enterprise. So you need to connect Emma to the right set of tools. We have already pre-integrated with 200 plus enterprise applications. So you don't need to replace any application. Emma works with your existing application. And even if we don't have not integrated with the specific application you are using today, or maybe it's an internal application, we have APIs. So you can quickly integrate Emma to your application. So connecting Emma to the right tools, again, if it's one of the pre-built integrations, just takes a few minutes. If it's something that's proprietary to you, it may take like a few days, right? Quite simple. So that's the first few days. Like just give Emma all the knowledge base. Emma will now quickly train on that. Second step will be asking Emma to do some example tasks. It's very similar to, you hire a new employee, maybe an intern. Okay, do this task, and I'll look over your shoulder a little bit and see how you have done it and give feedback. So same thing, you'll ask Emma to do some example tasks where maybe another human employee has already done that task, but you are asking to see how Emma does it. And you'll compare and give feedback. Emma doesn't need a lot of examples, just few tens of examples, 100 of examples is enough for Emma to quickly become proficient and start performing at the level your human employees are performing. And then within a few weeks, you should have the confidence to deploy Emma in production. But generative software is quite different from traditional software, this paradigm, this is why this hiring Emma or an AI employee paradigm is so important to really internalize. So traditional software is fixed. Unless something is broken somewhere, right, or someone pushed some bad code, it will more or less work the same way every time. But generative software, because the machinery is quite complex, it's using, for in Emma's case, we are using lots of LLM calls. We have very complex agentic architecture. Things can change underneath. So you need to, time to time, check and give performance, do performance eval of generative software, not just Emma. Any generative software will be very similar. You need to kind of look, check,
That's
and
almost
give
like
feedback.
retraining, checking in on human employees as well,
Yeah,
right?
the example or analogy I have is, look, you can hire a very good employee
Yeah.
and first 3 months they are off to a great start.
Yeah.
But you are not going to stop doing performance eval for them.
Yes, makes
After
sense.
6 months, you are going to check in and say, okay, what have you done? How are you doing? And so on. So we kind of recommend the same thing every like quarter or 6 months, like do a check-in and see how Emma is doing. What's interesting is we have inbuilt a lot of this Turing evaluation, Turing tests within the product. Right? So it's very easy to give feedback to Emma, and you don't need an elaborate kind of time commitment. You can just quickly give some feedback, and Emma will incorporate and retrain.
I can see some natural tension here though. So when you're hiring a bright young kid out of college, when you're training that kid, you're not worried about the kid taking your job in a few weeks. But here it seems like you train them well enough and then Emma might be taking over your functions. How does that tension play out in your deployments? And there is, of course, a lot of talk happening about AI and job cuts. I think the broader topic is more for economists and policymakers than
Right.
founders. But still, do you see this tension coming out already? This fear of losing your job if the AI actually does the job well?
Look, I think the fear is real, right? But I don't know if the rationale behind the fear is as real, right? And this I've seen in the past also. See, when computers came in, there's a lot of fear in India at that time. I grew up here. Oh, this will, anyway, there are no jobs. At that time, like 1980s, 1990s, India was quite different, right? There's a lot more struggle, right? That generation today, thankfully, don't have to face. So the fear was, oh, computers are all going to take further jobs away, right? There are not many jobs available, and this is not a good thing. We can look back and see that actually computers have done huge benefits to Indian economy in the last 20 years or so, because it has created more jobs than taken away. So it may feel that way, right? But I think human beings are capable of a lot more. When you free up a person from doing a repetitive task that they anyway did not want to do in the first place, that person then will go and build something new or create some more value-added task. For many of our customers, the reason they're deploying Emma is not to actually replace people or cut jobs. Sometimes they have real challenges in terms of pacing their growth. So a large B2C lending company in India using Emma for their customer support. Their top line is growing 100%, 200, sometimes 150 or 200% year on year. To pace to that growth, they need to increase their support at that level.
Correct.
It's very hard to do that. So for them, this is like, okay, how do I smoothen out, right, my customer support personnel, right? How can I do more without keep hiring or without limiting my top line growth? When I was at Flipkart, we used to do big billion days. Flipkart still does that. That was the biggest challenge there was like a month before big billion days, we had to go and hire a lot of temporary workers. And then after a month, we had to kind of let them go again. So it was a huge challenge for the company to hire, train, manage. And those are the things where I think generative AI will be most successful in the short term. I think there is a real transformation needed in the economy in terms of reskilling people. But I think overall, just like what we had seen with the previous internet or computer revolution, there'll be more jobs created, more opportunities created. than there are today. And it may be hard for us to imagine what those are right today, but I'm very confident that's what will happen because human creativity has kind of no limits. And I'm very optimistic about how this technology will transform our civilization as a whole.
Fair, fair. And while we can transform the civilization, while Emma takes care of the boring enterprise tasks.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Let me shift gears a little bit. Talk about the competitive landscape, right? There are quite a few companies now, both incumbents and startups, which are claiming some form or the other. While Emma is almost fully autonomous, they're like on a gradient. There are quite a few companies which are taking these agentic workflows towards autonomy and autonomous task completion. How does Emma stand out? What have you done on the product side over the last year or so for you to get the confidence that you are indeed on the right path? You kind of stand out from this crowd.
Look, first, as we discussed before, we built Ema as a horizontal platform, which is kind of unique. And that was our conviction from the very beginning. We stuck to it and continue to build. And I make this contradictory or contrarian statement. Actually, because we built Ema as a horizontal platform, we can do each vertical better. In fact, that's the statement I made in the basement, like I think a year and a half, or 2 years back.
Yes.
Right? And we are seeing that in play today. Because Ema now understands very different types of workflows, right? It can automatically spawn multiple agents and orchestrate between those agents to perform those workflows. So think of Ema as a conversational interface to build a multi-agent system. And the way we have built it is business users can use it. So you don't need to know any coding. You can just with natural language give Ema instruction on the high-level problem. Ema will create multiple agents and orchestrate. And our orchestration technology today is cutting edge. Like a lot of research papers that are published, we have probably already done that in our work for last year and a half because we started pretty early on this vision. So that's the first thing, right? The platform is very powerful, and what we are seeing is because of the way we have built the platform, even for a single vertical, we can go a lot deeper into how we automate. So for example, for customer support, we can not only do like the chatbot L0 kind of deflection, we can actually resolve L2, L3 tickets. And those tickets, I'm not just answering, but resolving requires taking real actions inside the enterprise, understanding complex documents, reasoning on those documents, orchestrating multiple applications, and so on. So that's the first thing, where it's very simple to use, but extremely powerful. Second, we have built a very powerful mixture of experts model called Ema Fusion. Ema Fusion today...
I was waiting for you to drop Fusion. Yes. Please tell the world what Fusion is about.
Ema Fusion today works on top of 100 plus public LLMs. Those are kind of the experts. And many private LLMs or our own small models that we created based on domain-specific public data and so on. And we can also integrate small models based on customers' data, which are, of course, going to be attached to that customer. Only will never use those models for any other customer. But Ema Fusion intelligently combines outputs from multiple models to create maximum accuracy at the lowest possible cost. And the results are quite staggering. We have our benchmarks demonstrate, for like certain workloads like customer support or document generation. We are working on like sales enablement use cases, compliance use cases. Our cost is sometimes 1/10 or even lower compared to if you just went and used vanilla public kind of large models, with the accuracy being higher often. So the agentic architecture and fusion model together is very powerful in creating this high accuracy, low or no hallucination, and very low cost architecture. So that's quite unique. So in what we have built. And I'll say a third thing. So very simple, very accurate. Third thing is trusted, which is very important in the enterprise, right? From day one, we built Ema to be enterprise ready. In fact, a lot of people ask me, oh, why are you working on SOC 2 compliance on the second week of the, starting
I
the
believe your
company?
design partners were Fortune 1000 companies.
Fortune 1000 exactly.
Yeah.
So they needed that. Yeah. They came and say, hey, where is your SOC 2? So we started on compliance very early. So we are today SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, ISO 27001 compliant, and multitude of other compliance that we have checked the boxes on.
It's the dreaded CISO
exactly.
and all of
so
that.
We can navigate that
diligence,
quite easily.
Yeah.
But not just that, we have built a whole data governance layer underneath Ema. So we automatically redact any sensitive information and replace them with form preserving text or phrases before we call into any LLM. We have hired some of the best security professionals. So we do penetration tests almost every week on our system. So they are trying to hack our system and giving us feedback and so on. So all this is what makes Ema extremely scalable and trusted for the enterprise. And that's how we differentiate. A lot of our customers actually are in regulated industries, healthcare, fintech, legal, and we have been able to do that because of our focus on trust from early on.
Interesting. It's been, of course, a privilege to see the rapid growth you have shown over the last year or so. I would love to talk a little bit about hiring from you. And I'm not talking about hiring AI, hiring some real flesh employees. You have hired multiple, I believe, maybe hundreds of high caliber people over the last few roles that you have taken. Are there a few things that you look for? What sets, again, a human employee apart in your eyes from others?
See, for us, hiring is both looking at the competence of the person as well as the culture fit. We are very big on culture fit. From day one, we would not hire someone who may be very competent but not fit with our culture. And I'll maybe talk through a little bit of our culture.
But before we get there, how do you judge culture in a conversation, Surojit? Or cultural fit, I meant.
Yeah, so I can give some examples.
Yeah, would love
right?
that.
So you can actually do a pretty fair assessment if you have clarity on culture as well. For example, we are looking at people who are, like, one of our cultural values is bold. We are solving very ambitious problem. So we want people who can think big, are not afraid to take risk, and are ambitious. So we can test that through the interview process because we can push their thinking. Okay, how would you think even bigger? And by the way, a lot of this is my learning through the years, right? I would go to Larry and Sergey in early days at Google. Every presentation, at some point, Larry or Sergey will stop and ask, it's okay, it's good, how will you 10x it? And when you come back with that idea after a few weeks, they'll ask again, but how will you 10x it again? Right? I think that thinking process is very important, right? How would you 10x it, not just in scale, but maybe in terms of how efficient the solution is, maybe latency, and every aspect of it, right? So we look for, can they dream big, right? The other important thing is, trust. We talked about the trust in the product. It also comes from hiring people who are trustworthy, right? So we are looking for people who are not passive aggressive, who are not into political behavior. So we will always do ref checks, sometimes back channel checks on people, and see, some people may be very good, but may have a political bent in terms of how they operate, and they will not fit well with our culture. We can check that. Next thing we look at is relentless drive. We call it relentless drive or resilience. In a startup, there will be ups and downs. Can they keep a positive attitude through those ups and downs? Because some people will be pessimistic. There are lots of things to be pessimistic about in a startup. right? You are in this business,
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
right? Because a lot of things are not working.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
chaos, right? You have to build so much. You're taking on competitors who are
yeah,
like
yeah,
1,000x or 1,000,000x
yeah,
bigger than you, and it can be very daunting. So you need to have people who are super optimistic, who are super resilient because there will be setbacks. So we often ask this question in our interview process, tell us about a time when you had to face significant challenges to overcome in your life. And you can learn a lot from that simple question. What they think of, what they say, right? What they think as a significant challenge. And you will be
yeah,
surprised with some of the
yeah, yeah.
answers sometimes.
What's the most surprising answer you've heard?
Most surprising answer was
Didn't get my morning coffee.
yeah, I mean, something of that nature.
Yeah,
It's like, my significant challenge was, the first, what I called the first world problem,
yeah, yeah,
right? Something I'm like, really? That was your most significant
yeah.
challenge, right? For example, oh, my project got canceled or something. Like, that
Sure.
happens all the time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Even in big companies and
yeah.
so on. That's not probably the most significant challenge you can think of, right? We look for people who have an extreme bias to action, right? So act like an owner. If you think of owners or founders, one thing that will be common is they have bias to action. And I believe, and by the way, a lot of this part I learned from Brian Armstrong at
Yeah.
Coinbase. He will often talk about this. Is action produces information. You are in a very ambiguous situation in a startup, right? When you are starting something out, a lot of things are unknown. The best way is to do something and see the reaction, or see it. Sometimes it's technical unknowns, right? You can read Twitter and you can read blogs all day long, but when you actually build something, you see, oh, it's actually cannot be built the way the paper describes or the Medium blogs speak about it. By the way, in GenAI, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of buzz. When you actually build something, you see what's real and what's not. So for us, that's very important. We quickly go and build rather than pontificating for a long time. How will we build? Once we build the prototype, we can go and iterate and see, oh, how do we scale and so on. So extreme bias to action.
No, it's amazing how you're doing it. It's not like a prosumer or consumer product where
Right.
you can like do like a lot of iterations. It's a proper enterprise setting. And so moving fast, breaking things, you can't really break that many things either, but you
Right.
still have to move fast. So
Yeah, this is a new era of software building because there are so many technical unknowns
yeah,
in generative AI.
yeah,
And so many things that are being talked about,
yeah.
or people think, oh, it's already done,
Yeah.
actually not done at
Yes,
scale
that's
in the
right. Yeah,
enterprise.
yeah.
That's kind of very real for us, right? And then I'll say the last thing is innovation. That's one of our values. So, bold, trusted, relentless drive, act like an owner, and innovative. Those are our 5 values, and we check for that. We look at, I always ask the question, tell us about a time when you have solved something creatively. It could be anything. Innovation doesn't mean filing a patent only. We have filed a lot of patents, but it's not just that. It could be out of the box thinking. We always look for that. And in any role, it doesn't need to be engineering. Can someone think out of the box, right? And sometimes we can test that with interesting kind of questions or situations, like, okay, what would you do here? And it's also a learned skill. I don't think it's like, it's something that someone either has it or not. I think it can be learned. It's like always challenging yourself, or how do we do it this differently, right? Those are the kind of people we are looking for. In terms of the process, a lot of people give us feedback, oh, your process is quite different, because we do regular interviews, but a big part of our process is what we call a THP, take-home project, where we give a set of problems and give someone 24 to 48 hours. And it's like an open book exam. We encourage them, go use ChatGPT if you have to. You can generate code, you can look at books, you can read papers, you can do whatever it's possible. But we want to see your approach in terms of how much risk you took, how bold your thinking was, in terms of how creative you were, how much action you took, because some people are very hesitant to even write the first line of code. We're looking for builders. We're looking for people who will jump in and write and take that risk and build something, right? Building something is always risky because you'll spend a lot of time and nothing may come out, right? And that's something that we try to live by ourselves as well. Every weekend, I'm not a huge coder myself, right? But I try to code every weekend and build some prototype on my own, just to understand the technology, the latest and greatest. And sometimes it's a sort of frustrating experience. Maybe it's not working, but that's the experience of regular engineers. So we want everyone to live those kind of experience, build something. And today, anybody can code with the help of co-pilots and so on.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think it's a pretty interesting team you have built both in the US and India. We are glad to be supporting you in both geographies. With this, I think we should wrap this up. We can talk about enterprise AI for hours, but we'll call it a day for now. Thanks so much for your time. We wish you all the best in your journey, in your words, to take the civilization forward. I do agree with it, by the way. Like in final words, I don't think humans were born to just file or draft long documents or answer relatively like repetitive queries. They were born to do more. Emma is taking civilization forward that way. So wish you all the best.
thank you so much, and thank you for all the support from Accel team as well.
It's a privilege.
And I think it's a privilege to work in this area right now. And
I think this is where you have to be. 24.
Exactly.
This is what you need.
If
to be
you
doing.
are excited about building something really interesting, building in generative AI, building in agentic AI, please, there's a little plug. Please look up our website.
It's not that little, Surojit, but sure.
Ema.co and connect with us. We
Yes,
would love
please,
to hire the best people wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.